Good afternoon, everybody.
I think it's important that we share, that we communicate, that we are open, and that we grow together to achieve.
Because we are the voice of what wellness is about, and it's up to us to spread the message.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome for our last, but by certainly not least session. The last 3 days, we've had 70 speakers, thousands of you joining us online on our Instagram and various social, Facebook, YouTube channels, and many of you joining us on Zoom. And I would say very briefly, if you are on the social channels, you can register and get in and join the chat at no cost by going to professionalbeauty.co.uk and following the links. Our mission these last few days has really been trying to provide inspiration, but even more so practical advice for the spa and wellness community. And I hope you'll agree we've achieved that. Very proud to introduce you to our co-host, Jean-Guy de Gabriac, and the World Wellness Weekend. And Jean-Guy, this is very much your session. And he's introducing and running the session on making the spa and wellness industry relevant with United Nations 17 SDGs. Jean-Guy de Gabriac, over to you.
Thank you so very much, Mark. And I cannot express how grateful I am, and I believe, speaking on behalf of the profession and all the panelists that I've joined, how grateful we are to you for putting up this event, for your teams in UK, South Africa, GCC, India, and as you would say, in no particular order, but definitely an amazing team effort to bring this conference online, and especially with the support of two platinum sponsors, Biologique Recherche and Lemmy, whose support has made it available for free to all. You said it, Mark, and very well so. This past 3 days have been full of answers. No one knows what the future is going to bring. All we can do is not brace for impact, because we're in there all together in the same boat at the same time. But what we can do is plan and plant the seeds of what we can do. Change is coming, change has come, and we need to adapt, we need to pivot, and we need to write scenarios of how we could evolve. This session is definitely about how we can build a new system, a new healthcare system, really not a sick care system, but a healthcare system in the views of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's also a panel where we'll go into the why, the purpose, the meaning of why we chose this industry in hospitality, spa, salons, fitness, hot springs, wellness-related industries, yoga, fitness. There are so many thousands of you joining. Because we are caregivers, we want to enhance lives, those of our guests, those of our associates, and ours. And so far, before this pandemic came about, and before the pandemic was all the media talked about for weeks and months, giving us scary statistics, we're also going to take a look at the NCDs, the non-communicable diseases that are cancer, respiratory, heart diseases, strokes, diabetes, that we, as an industry, can be the second wave of responders, making this world a better world and a well world. To dig deep into the session, I would like to present to you Roland Schatz, founder of the United Nations Global Sustainability Index Institute Foundation, whom I had the pleasure of meeting on several occasions in different events that he organized, and especially in Davos twice during the World Economic Forum. Gareth Presh is also joining us from Ireland, founder of the World Health Innovation Summit, expert in SDG 3, Sustainable Development Goals, with the United Nations Global Sustainability Index Institute Foundation, but also the vice chair of the initiative that I'm chairing for the Global Wellness Institute, supporting the UN 17 SDGs. And live from Australia, ladies and gentlemen. It's very late there, but she's there with us. Manuela Boyle, who was a fantastic speaker a few years ago at one of the World Spine Wellness Conventions in Dubai. Manuela is a public health certified practitioner in functional medicine. She's a published author, an international speaker, and an expert advisor of the World Health Innovation Summit and also the SDG 3. And I'm Jean-Guy de Gabriac. I'll be moderating, as Mark said, and I'm the founder of the World Wellness Weekend. So we're going to touch on many topics today. We're going to talk about facts versus fear, and we're going to talk about how we can all together be active, especially in the views of the Sustainable Development Goals. Roland, before we kick it off, I would really appreciate if you could explain to us what happened in 2015 when 193 heads of states decided to take a vote and voted unanimously on the framework that are the 17 SDGs. And then 1 year later, when they reconvened and said, so what have we achieved? And they looked at each other in the eyes and said, whoops, did we forget something? What actually are we doing? And this is when you came along, and this is when you created the UNGSII. Roland?
Well, nothing happens from one day to the other. So when they all got together, it was because Kofi Annan had started 15 years before what he called the Millennium Development Goals. And as we all know, an entity which has a lot of members cannot force anything on the members because the members decide what they do and what they don't do. So when Kofi Annan started these 15 Millennium Development Goals, he used a very careful language. Let's reduce poverty. Let's improve the lives for children. Let's get better on health. But it wasn't very precise. But even with this language, what he achieved already within 7-8 years down the road, now in 2008, he managed that when his ask the member states, what shall we do in January 1st, 2016? Do we want to continue with goals? Do we want to continue with ambitious targets, or shall we just drop it? The member states then came up and said, no, we shouldn't drop anything. We should come up with new goals, but this time we should define them. It should be us, whether it is Australia, or whether it is Zimbabwe, whether it is Namibia, or whether it is the UK, and they should define which goals they want to achieve. That made the big difference. It took them 6 years, don't get me wrong. But when all these heads of states, the 193 heads of states got together September 25 to agree on the so-called 17 Sustainable Development Goals, they agreed on very precise language. SDG 1, no poverty. SDG 2, zero hunger, and so on. And on top, for each of these 17 SDGs, they defined 10 sub-targets. One has only 9, so that is why we talk about 169 targets. And knowing that these 193 heads of states agreed to this new compass to the world empowers you, Jean-Guy, as well as Gareth, as well as Manuela and myself and all the others, that we can contribute to reach these goals by December 2030. That's the promise. Nothing more, but nothing less.
Thank you. Why would it be, I mean, it was super important back then. Why is it even essential now? And how far are we from achieving these goals? 10 years away from the 2030 deadline.
Well, we look back to a 4 years starting period. And while not everybody is aware of it, what happened was that every year in July, all member states take 2 weeks to present progress on a free will base. It was not forced on them. This pressure started with this year. And as of January 2020, it's no longer just, do we want to share progress? As of this year, we have to share data. We have to show concrete projects where each of these 193 countries are on their way towards reaching all 17 goals by 2030. And if you look into these presentations, in the first year, in July 2016, were only 17 countries. Then it was 43 countries. Last year, I think it was beyond 80 countries who shared progress with each other. And if you are only looking at the network within the UN, that's one part. But what inspires me the most is that entities like the European Union are asking their member states to report themselves on a regular basis. Where are we in regards to gender equality? Where are we in regards to education? And the countries receive support for their countries more and more in line with how they contribute to the SDGs. So this became, for the first time ever in history, a guideline which is more than just talk. It's about action. And it's about creating transparency. Where are we in Austria? Where are we in New Zealand? Where are we in Brazil on each of these SDGs? That makes the difference.
Absolutely. And before I pass on the mic to Gareth, big contribution also the two of you have been making in the past few weeks. When the world was in lockdown, when there was radical uncertainty, when governments were saying something and then the opposite a few days later, creating maximum confusion, you were making a very significant contribution with Corona Perspectives, joining the task force that has been initiated by Pope Francis and led with Father Augusto. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing and publishing?
Well, every Wednesday, we put on our website, www.ungsi.org/SDG-cities. We present 4 pages, helping those who are too busy to follow everything what is happening regarding 4 questions. Question number 1 is, what do we see? Or what do we don't see? Because the national media, the international media are not always good in providing us the full perspective of what is going on and what is lacking. The second question is, what can we judge by looking back? Because this is not the first pandemic. It's quite a number of pandemics which we have seen. And there were other crises in the past. If we mention 9/11, if we look at the financial crisis after the Lehman collapse in 2006, the world has experienced several challenges. And for us, it was important that we don't look into April 2020, May 2020, without knowing that there was already wisdom years ago and there was ignorance years ago. And by making this transparent, it might help us to move on faster to those things which are necessary. The third page is focusing simply on the question, what can I do as Roland this week? What can be done in the hospitals? And thirdly, what can we do in senior citizen homes or in assisted living homes? Because they seem to be forgotten. And then the fourth page is giving a platform and perspective for cities, because we all know that the advantage of living in a city and putting change in place in a city is that we can all check on whether people are only talking or whether they are doing. And that is why the fourth page is dedicated to progress in the cities around the world.
Thank you, Roland. I just placed on the chat box the link to ungisii.org/SDGcities, and I will share it also on the Facebook page of World Wellness Weekend for those. If you're listening to this session now from LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, you can still join the Zoom room where we are, and you can ask questions in about 30 minutes. So all you have to do is go to the Professional Beauty page on Facebook of the closest team to you. There's one in the UK, one in GCC, one in South Africa, and one in India. So go to that Facebook page, click on the link, register. It's completely free thanks to our 2 platinum sponsors, and join the conversation. Gareth, out of the 17 SDGs, there are 2 actually that are very, very dear to your heart. Sometimes it's very hard for a parent to name their favorite kid. But as for you, I have to say that out of the 17, you chose 2, which is number 4, education. But let's focus on SDG 3, good health and well-being. Can you give us an overview of the main points of this SDG and some of its targets?
Absolutely, Jean-Guy, a pleasure to join today. I suppose it's a bit of a giveaway when it says SDG 3, good health and well-being, and really that's the focus of SDG 3. And I think it's really about trying to build a system that focuses on health, and well-being. Current system, and you're all aware this, is focused very much on disease, and this is where the opportunity comes, particularly with the wellness sector and bridging that between our current health system. So, target-wise, we've got quite an extensive list of targets. By 2030, we want to reduce the global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70 per 100,000. And then by 2030, we want to end preventable deaths of newborns and children under 5 years of age. Just some of the two interventions there that we have that we're currently working on is a global pregnancy program. That's how we intend to kind of stop that happening. And then by 2030, we want to end, epidemics, AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria. We want to achieve universal health coverage, affordable, essential medicines and vaccines for all. These are the sort of things we're looking to kind of work on. We want to increase health financing, recruitment, retention. I suppose most people won't be aware, but by 2030, we face, a staff shortfall of 18 million staff globally in the health services. That's a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. Particularly, you see the system, the kind of frailty our system has at the moment around COVID. I mean, what happens to the staff? Remember, all these staff, they're under so much pressure. They've been under so much pressure for the last, 15, 20 years. These are colleagues I've worked with, for the vast majority of my life. And, how is this going to impact their health and well-being? Will they want to stay in that role? These are huge questions that are going to come along the line. And I think this is where we can help with SDG 3.
Thank you so very much. Just to let you know, Roland, Gareth, and Manuela, there are people in this chat box from Qatar, from Brazil, from Nigeria, and we will be talking about Africa very soon, from Dakar, from the UK, of course, from Punta Cana. So the world is listening, from India too. And I just posted, Roland, the links to the Corona perspectives in several languages. But I forgot to mention a country. Australia is in the house. Manuela, you're there with us, and thank you so very much. I remember when you spoke in Dubai a few years ago, you literally changed the energy in the room, because you are giving your life. You're dedicated, like most practitioners that are in our industry, to helping people in dire situations, whether they're facing illnesses or they want to still reach optimal health because they've had issues in the past. So the media has been saturated with COVID-19 for those past weeks. It's the only thing people have talked about. Tell us, what are the topics that they should also have talked about when humanity was in lockdown, on how to boost their immune system? And is COVID-19 the pandemic that is very tragic results, but is it the tree that is hiding the forest with more pandemics that we're facing?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me, and good evening, good night, really, from Australia. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's just COVID is, of course, it's such a distressing and shocking and overwhelming issue at the moment, which of course it is well and truly pandemic. There are of course lots of facts versus fear, like you mentioned earlier on, but the reality of the situation is there are many more people continuing on with their lives who likely have not been affected by the coronavirus, but nevertheless they continue on with trying to stay well. Perhaps I have a lot to do with cancer patients, for example, with cancer survivors, people who are going through cancer treatments, and life has not really very much changed for them, other than of course feeling more in fear than ever before, because of course they're vulnerable people. But same thing applies to the huge army of those affected by cardiovascular disease or cardiometabolic issues, diabetics, etc. So chronic issues still persist. The coronavirus is an acute type of issue, and so we're talking about acute care at the moment with them, but in the background there are many others who really need to have the help they deserve. It's interesting how now we're thinking about, in fact, the WHO just today, that's what we heard here in Australia anyway, talking about the fact that there is a possibility that the coronavirus will become could be in fact be referred to more like in a chronic issue rather than an acute disease once the curve somewhat flattens. So yeah, and that's exactly right what Gareth mentioned before, that we have a healthcare system that needs to be perhaps reconsidered in ways that it can support all of those who need to have some help. So yeah, it was interesting times. I have some figures about what's happening in the world. For example, there's a figure from the WHO once again. And by this year, for example, the 71% of death that due to ischemic heart disease, so cardiovascular disease, for example, and this was before we were talking about the coronavirus. This is regardless of the COVID. So 75% of death due to stroke, 70% of death due to diabetes. And these are not just figures applying to developing world, but countries rather, but also to more affluent countries. So yes, there is a significant need for healthcare services to support people with chronic issues.
Indeed,
sure.
Because World Health Organization is roughly, not roughly, but their estimation is that every year 30+ million people are dying prematurely because of what could be referred as poor lifestyle choices, because of those non-communicable diseases. These are generated mainly by stress or poor nutrition, but it's not something they catch. It's coming from within and developing in their system. This is something also we should be really focusing on as the doctors are, and social distancing or physical distancing is flattening the curve. This is what hospitals are going to be facing next. This is the next wave of people who are staying at home, not afraid of going to the hospital, afraid of catching either COVID-19 or any of those diseases that can be caught sometimes in hospitals. How are healthcare providers bracing for this second wave of people coming with NCDs?
Right, that's a very good question. So, of course, worldwide, there is now what's known as telehealth. So healthcare services are basically relying upon Skype or Zoom or teleconferencing with their patients. But you're right, it is really starting from within. And when you referred or alluded earlier on about improving the immune system, increasing resilience, both physical and mental, that's absolutely critical in order to then really somewhat look at some sort of solution. So really what we need to think of is to think about a type of healthcare that is not disease-centered really, but it's aiming at being person-centered and giving the opportunities and the tools to each person to be able to actually improve their own outcome. And this is what functional medicine comes in quite strongly. It's a different medicine. Perhaps it is thought of as the medicine of the future, but I think it is the medicine of the present time, really. Things are changing. So making it simple, starting with improving the immune system, starting with a change of lifestyle. Now we can talk about lifestyle medicine in a way, and increasing resilience, psychological, mental resilience, and that codependency with healthcare centers will not be sustainable long term. So it is important to have a good cooperation, an equal cooperation between patient and a healthcare provider.
Thank you, Manuela. What I love with this conversation on Zoom is that there's a conversation that people can follow through social media, listening to what you say, and the people who are joining on this Zoom session can also follow information that are added in the chat box. And I'm going to pass the mic to Gareth, who just corrected me. It's not 30 million people who may die prematurely because of NCDs. It could be 50 million, Gareth, by 2030?
Yeah, that's the estimate, Sean-Guy. Just to give some context as well, like when you look at the opportunity here, you know, the global healthcare economy is worth $8 trillion. You know, by 2030, as I mentioned, it will need 80 million staff. The projections are around 18 million short. And then when we look at the wellness sector, which is actually growth area, like, so I think in 2-3 years ago, it was around 4 trillion. It's now over 5 trillion. So it's definitely the area that is growing. This is where we need to bridge the gap, you know, bridge between the current health system and the wellness sector. This is where the opportunity is. You know, so I think there's a lot of work. We obviously want to try and shift and focus towards prevention because we want to try and flatten the curve permanently. That's probably what COVID gives us, is that opportunity to do that. You know, I'm fortunate enough to work with Manuela, and as she mentioned, you know, there's other experts out there that we're working with. We're trying to bridge that gap. And then if you look at the, you know, emerging nations like Africa, South, you know, and South America and other areas, you know, there's knowledge transfer that they can learn from the mistakes we've made. And that's part of the Corona perspective as well, is to give, you know, facts and evidence-based information.
Thank you so very much. Roland, you are back live. We had a technical issue with your video. It is fixed. We can see you, and we can see behind you the book that you have published. I believe it is the 3rd edition of SDG cities, and that was perfect cue. My next question. Which cities are emerging as the lighthouses that could inspire the 9,000 others around the world through the SDG cities program that you're leading?
Well, I think there's no such thing like this one city. The cities are a nice mirror of humanity. And as you are special and Manuela is special, every city is special. But we can learn, for instance, from the energy of a city like Mendoza, where the people got together in lots of different meetings, defining 268 projects they think, together with their 7 mayors, which are necessary to move the city towards the SDGs. Then you have a city like Iași and Brasov in Romania, where you have experts in different areas around health and education, who are not waiting until others give them guidance, but where they empower their communities to move on and define concrete goals, like now helping restaurants, helping hotels helping hospitals get back to normal by providing sort of tent tunnels, so people can walk through a tent where they walk through a fog, which is basically like a little rain, if you want. But all what rains is a combination from water and salt, and it helps to kill any virus, whether it is corona or whether it is Ebola or any other virus. And all what it takes is then that once you enter the building, you wear a face mask to ensure that in case you are sick, by coughing, you are not spreading your virus. But everybody in the building, whether it is a school, a hospital, a restaurant, they have already cleaned the building by fogging with mobile foggers the building to ensure that there is no risk entering a school or a hospital, because that is what hurts me the most when I look into different cities or countries, that people lost trust to go to the doctors, to go to the hospitals when they need them, no matter whether they are infected by corona or COVID-19, or whether they are facing another emergency like a heart attack or something else. They feel insecure to go to these places because they think they can catch corona. And that is something what has to be changed immediately. And I'm grateful to learn from Romania that they are working towards a solution for this.
Thank you. You mentioned Romania. Let's have a little update on who's in the room. Mendoza is in the house. Croatia, Cancun, Italy, Pearl in South Africa. So countries and cities are joining. Speaking of which, Roland, I just shared in the chat box the link to the PDF of the SDG Cities book, the 3rd edition you have right behind you. Can you lead us into better understanding the framework that you're proposing? Implement, adjust, empower.
Well, as we discussed earlier on, it had been 193 heads of states who decided that they want these 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be their compass. But with all these big goals, it is important and useful to see and create little lighthouses, front runners, from which the others can learn. So we came up with this concept, with this platform of inviting 25 cities, the mayors as well as the citizens in these cities, in 5 different categories, to implement the 17 SDGs already as front runners until December 2025. What are these 5 categories? We said we need to start with university cities, because without academia, without all these amazing scholars around the world and research which is existing, we won't be able, whether talking about reducing poverty or putting poverty to zero, whether this is just a dream or whether this can become a reality, we need facts, figures, and good research behind it. So that is why we invited 5 university cities to walk the path with us. Then we have 5 cities with citizens around 500,000 inhabitants, 5 cities with 1 to 5 million inhabitants, then 5 mega cities like Mexico City or Tokyo, and then 5 cities where the UN itself has offices like Vienna or Santiago de Chile, because the UN, as any other entity, needs to walk the talk themselves. And as you know, the concept is called 25 plus 5. We invite as well 5 indigenous communities, because we will not have reached our goal in 2030 if the official states get to implement the SDGs, but we forget about the indigenous. And therefore we have 5 indigenous communities who are invited to join as well. And I'm very proud to announce that the people from Bougainville, a little outside of Papua New Guinea, are one of these, and they do amazing work, and they have great leaders. You need to know that the whole islands and the ground is owned by the women, and what they try to put in place is an inspiration for all of us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Quick question before we move on to Gareth. What would you say are the benefits to become an SDG city, to apply? There are PhDs that are going to be helping them achieve those. Can you dig a little deeper into that?
Well, imagine if you would have a side of your city plate, Paris, on this city plate, a logo, and this logo would be UNICEF. Wouldn't the whole world immediately understand this whole city, the moment I enter into this town, is caring about children? And that should be more than having pedestrian zones every now and then. Everybody would immediately understand Paris being allowed to use the UNICEF logo would be child-friendly in regards to childcare, would be child-friendly in regards to multiple education systems, etc., etc. Now let's talk about these days. Could you imagine one city being allowed to use the logo WHO or WIS, which would immediately let the people know our doctors, our hospitals, our wellness, our spas are all focused on improving our immune system and not just reducing health to the question on, is here somebody who can help me when I get sick? So you understand the concept. The idea is that people, when they enter a city, that they know our people in this city, our schools, our hospitals, the doctors, everybody cares about certain aspects around these 17 SDGs. And I can only invite everybody to move on, getting fast on implementing health, because we can all feel in these days how important this is. If we are not taking care of our health, it makes no sense to talk about education or anything else.
Agreed. It's very powerful leverage. And what I appreciate even more, and this is why we've been discussing for the past 2 years, and I'm so happy the three of you are part of this session. It's not just about the conversation. It's not just about the templates. It's not just about the audits that can go on and on and on. It's about implementing. It's about empowering. Gareth, can you give us a few examples of the projects currently underway, and let's say, for instance, in Europe and Africa?
Sure. Yeah, we've quite an extensive project pipeline at the moment. As Roland mentioned, Romania, which is kind of out of the traps. So we're looking at, advanced manufacturing plants for future development of AMR vaccines, and we're looking at wellness centers. We're looking at polyclinics. We're looking at pregnancy wellbeing programs. We've got children's programs, WIS Kids, which looks at emotional well-being. We've got WIS at work, which is stress management in the workplace. WIS Seniors, which looks at falls prevention, quality of life and loneliness, but also wisdom and knowledge transfer, because our elderly community, they have so much to give. Even at this time where they're suffering, probably the most. I'd just like to highlight that I think, we myself and Roland have been working on the Corona perspective, and we, have been, we should have moved quickly, to protect elderly people, the most vulnerable in our society. That's our job. That's part of what we need to do. We also have, WIS Green, which is energy, waste and water. You've got WIS Tech, which is enabling technology. And these are the projects that we're focused on. I mean, we currently have a pipeline with UNGSII of over 400 projects. Very exciting time, because it gives us the opportunity, as Roland says, to move cities and move communities forward at actionable, to get things done, so, and we're focused on, supporting existing health services. We're focusing on, creating new and meaningful jobs. I mean, that's one of the most important things to do, is to have a purpose in life. Health and well-being is a huge area. It's a huge opportunity. The pillars that I mentioned, each one of those pillars, you can scale. That's the beauty. It's like a framework. It also has, we have a methodology. We've prototyped this in the UK, where we know a pound invested gives 36 back in societal impact. So, you know, all we need now is to be able to coach and mentor. If there's projects out there that are, you know, have impact, we can work with them. We can try and join the dots to investment opportunities. So that kind of gives you an overview of kind of what SDG 3 is about, moving from disease to, which is pathogenic, to a salutogenic approach, which is well-being.
Salutogenic, this is definitely a word, before I pass on to Manuela. Gareth, this is definitely a word that resonated a lot in a lot of people's ear when you spoke about it 2 years ago at a presentation that we both co-hosted at the residence of the French ambassador in Brussels. Can you tell us more about your view about rebuilding a new system that is really salutogenic, a health system, not a sick care system?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too much into this, you know, into the salutogenesis approach, but I can simplify. It's just a medical approach focusing on the factors that support human health and well-being, rather than the factors that cause disease, which is pathogenic. So we're focused on prevention, you know, so that's why I mentioned about the pregnancy program that we've developed with Dr. Raja Gangapati. I mean, we're looking at intervention early. So if you start the process, even pre-conception, and support mothers and families, you're offsetting these long-term costs, which, you know, accumulate over NCDs. Remember, if someone, you know, there is obviously human cost, but then there's economic value as well. And that's how you put your value proposition together. You know, we have a lot of mental health and well-being aspects to this as well. But that's kind of a summary of it.
Thank you, Manuela. And by the way, Gareth, when you mentioned Romania, let me tell you that we have 2 people from Romania in the chat room, and Manuela, we have someone from the Gold Coast in Australia listening to you. Maybe it's a member of your family. I don't know. Did you tell anyone you were going to be on Facebook today?
Yes.
Can you, as an expert advisor of WIS and the SDGs, what specifically, because I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of this. It's not just conversation. It's not just writing books and attending lectures. What are the best practices that you have seen implemented for SDG 3 in the world so far?
Okay, so let me say that it's not just me, and certainly there's a large group of experts here that
of course.
not here tonight, but of course we all work together with Gareth and Roland, obviously. The point is really, it's like Gareth mentioned before, is absolutely right. I mean, we have to move from a disease-centered type of healthcare into a person-centered type of healthcare. So if we go down to the nitty-gritty, what that means is number one, really to improve health literacy. Health literacy goes a little bit quite beyond the capacity to read and write, but it is really the ability, the capacity of people to really self-manage, to make choices, to really embrace well-being, from a point of view of empowerment and education. So that's really important. So we have to move, really had no other choices but to move from a point of codependency, in a sense, from a healthcare system which are not able to support millions and millions of people with chronic issues, onto really a much more engaged and empowering and again, improving that health literacy and engagement. In a way, there are many attempts have been done, I don't know, maybe thousands of studies, pilot studies, questionnaires gone into, again, referring to many PhDs, whereby really asking people, so what is it, what do you need, what do you want, what's the problem between, you know, in healthcare centers, for example, why is it, you know, are you satisfied with the type of care that you receive, or etc. So this has been already, this is a preliminary work that's already been done in several countries. There is a fundamental wish and need from everyone in the world to feel better, to get better, to live in wellness. And spine wellness centers around the world, of course, are, I suppose, the examples really on how to feel good and how to be well. But what if we could, for example, have that on a daily basis, at home even, making sure that there is a connection between the person and the planet, understanding that health and planetary health go, hand in hand, that resilience and spirituality is so incredibly important, really. So we're putting all the pieces together. A person is not just a disease. A person is a person, and as such, it's complex. However, a person has the ability also to, again, to engage into wellness and self-management. It's just difficult for some to understand how to, and that's why, and that's what we want to do. That's what we do, and that's what Gareth and Roland, of course, much more than anybody else, have been doing for so long, to bring that message.
Yeah. One scary number that you brought as we were preparing this session is that in 2010, 86% of all healthcare spending was for people with one or more chronic medical conditions. It's crazy, the money that's been spent. I believe you have a few more numbers to share about that, and then we'll pass on the mic to Roland, because I have a question about the SDG card as a great example on how we can contribute with top dollars and not the whatever you have left at the end of the month. So any other numbers about how much is spent by person and how much the gross domestic product is invested in healthcare or sick care?
Well, I have here some, those are data really, they go back, 2010 in United States at the time. I'm sorry, 2014. Mm-hmm. And the expenditures at the time in the United States was at $3 trillion. So it was a 17.5% of gross domestic product. So that was done, it was dedicated to healthcare or sick care in a way. So the and I look, I don't have the data here, but certainly similarly we could refer to the UK, or we could refer to Australia, or to many other countries in the world with a similar system of sick care. So let's move from a sick care to a healthcare that is a wellness or that is a functional medicine, by again having a different perspective of a person-centered type of wellness or healthcare. The savings would be extreme. It would be fantastic, because once again there is a cooperation in wellness. Like, just for example, people who are affected by diabetes type 2, who really have to have just of course they have to be embracing a different lifestyle. Why don't they do that? Why are we failing with that? Why are not engaging into doing that? And why still healthcare services are spending trillions of dollars in trying to change patterns? Well, it's because it is, once again, it is a disease care model, is not a wellness care model, and people are not engaged or empowered to take matters in their hand and to really have fun with that, because a wellness care model is a lot of fun. It's great, it's optimistic, it's wonderful, and it's enduring. So if we move in that perspective, I think we're going to do very well, also from the point of view of expenditures.
Thank you, Manuela. Gareth, a word before I pass on the mic to Roland about this?
Yeah, sure, John. I think also we need to look at value creation. So when Manuela talks about trillions of dollars, and if you see the difference between the health system, it's taken as a cost. Perhaps we should be looking at it from a value creation point of view. So, and what I mean by that is, by keeping people healthy and well, they can then have a job which gives them meaning and purpose in life, which then creates economies at scale. So these are the sort of things we need to start looking at. We can create great value in health and well-being. That's why you're seeing the well-being sector grow over $5 trillion. The health system is at $8 trillion. There's $12 trillion, you know, we've plenty of money in the system. So we can totally get on top of this. You know, for example, you know, if we look at Alzheimer's, and obesity was mentioned there as well, non-communal diseases, for example, which is NCDs, includes obesity. We've had over 4 million deaths, 4 million deaths this year alone, right? Corona is about over 200,000. Look at the context of that. So we need to put things into perspective, and we also need to start joining the dots and look at action. And how do we implement sustainable change? That's what SDG 3 is about.
Thank you very much. We're going to start taking questions now, and I see a few coming along. Roland, before I ask you a question that I had about, you know, what next? What about the new normal? Big question that's coming. How can a city join, or how can a city apply to become an SDG city?
Well, at the end of the day, just contact your mayor. Get involved, because if we wait for governments, if we wait for mayors or prime ministers that they implement these 17 SDGs, we definitely have understood something wrong. Whether we live a life in line with these 17 SDGs is a question of, what do I do? What are you doing, Jean-Guy? What is Gareth doing? What is Manuela doing? And what are all the others doing? There's this famous sentence from Kennedy where he said, don't ask what the country can do, what can you do for the country? That's exactly what it is about the SDGs. What can you do to implement the SDGs in your town? Send me an email if you are interested in doing that. Within the UN, we have UN Habitat, which is the agency focusing on cities. They have a lot of concepts around there. We partner with UN Habitat. The World Bank has own city programs. The Climate Investment Fund has own city programs. There's a lot. But if the people don't stand up and start thinking of what can they do, we will not reach this goal. Let me get very practical. We are watching the evening news because of Corona. And we are listening to the anchors, as well as we are listening to the Prime Minister or the President. And all what these anchors are telling us, and the presidents and the prime ministers, is social distancing and wear your face mask. Well, why are they not using this amazing prime time visibility to tell us, and please eat an apple, walk for 30 minutes every day? Because it's about us getting immune. It's about us staying fit. We had this one note about obesity. When I started getting into the city program 3 years ago, I learned that the state of California was already 3 years ago spending 20 billion because of the cost of obesity. And for them, it was clear that this amount would raise by 2050 to 50 billion. And me, as a little boy from southern Germany, where we keep the euros together, where we are not in big spending, I was asking myself, what is the governor of California doing instead of planning to increase these 20 to 50 billion? What is he and his team and the mayors in California, what are they doing to make sure that in 2050 they only have to spend maybe 10 billion on obesity? And if you ask me, I would think 10 billion on obesity is still at least 5 too much, rather than thinking, oh, we need in future 50 billion on obesity. And that is what 25+5 is about. Use your brain, use your own logic mind by realizing, what can I do? I don't have to follow every nonsense which is presented in the media, which is presenting in advertising. I need to use my own brain. And when I see everybody with these face masks, which are important, don't get me wrong. But when I drove to Austria last week, I saw somebody wearing his face mask in his car. And I asked myself, there's something wrong. You can even see people wearing face masks on their bicycles. If we would take just a little bit of that energy towards using our brain a little bit more regularly to think, what can I do in regards to healthy food? What do I do for my daughters every morning? Am I squeezing an orange or am I putting a Coca-Cola, sorry guys, in front of them? I prefer a fresh squeezed orange juice. And it's up to me what I do, and it's not up to me waiting what the leaders in my countries might do or not do. And just to conclude on that, it's interesting that the German government, in midst of all this Corona madness, at least decided to give 2 billion to Africa, helping them on Corona. And we started a dialogue and we said, well, instead of investing now 2 billion into breathing machines, how about we define a program together with the African Union, with the president of the DRC in Congo? How can we make sure that the amount each of these 56 countries in Africa are spending on their own health system is increasing when it comes to prevention? And it is decreasing when it comes to buying drugs, etc. Although drugs are needed. But if we get better in prevention, we need less drugs. If we get better in informing ourselves, we can get less misguided. Because what I can see from my professional point of view in regards to Corona, I would say at least 60 to 70% is based on ignorance. It's people not reading what was already published 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Can we simply stop or at least reduce repeating the mistakes which were done 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago? Let's just get a little bit more intelligent by forming communities which are willing to help each other. That's what 25+5 is about.
Thank you very much, Roland. I'd like to add or to quote Maria Asinte. She's living in Dubai, but she's Romanian from birth. And as a developing genetic counselor, she's completely supporting what you're saying, and the fact that taking care of our lives quality and immunity, individually, we would then be contributing to the future human genome quality. That segues to you, Manuela. We're just 15 minutes away from the end of this session, last session of the 3 days of information-packed seminars. Very specifically with the spa directors, owners, managers, salons that are listening to us, what can they do? And also fitness clubs, because we had a very powerful session a few days ago about that yesterday. How can they be the second wave of responders to keep people healthy and strengthening immune systems? What would you like to say to them?
Great. Okay, another very good question. Well, however the person decides which way to, whatever, this person may decide to start wellness from the exercise, or whether this person may decide to go to a spa wellness center for a detoxification. Also, it doesn't really matter what the reason why the person may come to a wellness center. The point is, it's really, really important to address person's individuality by a team effort. So looking at the person from the point of view of his or her unique biochemistry, his or her unique totality. Person is a person, is not just the exercises, not just the detox. So it is important that, in my opinion, that wellness and spa centers may very well embrace the concept we were talking about before about functional medicine, but functionality, the totality of the person. So mind, body, spirit, which already is quite strong really within the wellness and spa community. I think that would be very important. The immune system is a wonderful defense that we have. We all have an immune system. but the immune system is fragile. It's strong and fragile at the same time. If we are mentally stressed, our immune system unfortunately pays the consequences. If we have a poor diet, for example, our immune system pays the consequences. If we don't sleep, our immune system is not great. So yes, if we want to look at the immune system as regenerating, improving, supporting our immune system, the benefits are multiple, including an imprint onto our genomic phenotype. So we can become well understanding, however, that it is within ourselves what we need. And so wellness and spas can give those instruments for this whoever comes and has these wonderful services to be able to actually improve an enduring wellness. So regenerating that immune system is important. There's many initiatives. There's a new institute in the United States that in fact is quite focused on regeneration of the immune system, again, for tackling various chronic issues. Because the thing is, the body has the ability to heal itself. It really does. We just have to give it the instruments to do that. Wellness operators from wellness centers and spas around the world have this unique opportunity to do so. I suggest really to look at the person in his or her totality, from diet to lifestyle to mind-body medicine to detoxification to and engaging them really in their own self-care. So improving, empowering people is ultimately the way in which we're going to shift this model of disease care into a person-centered care.
Thank you. As you were talking, I realized there's more people joining. Morocco is in the house, and also Rihanna. Rihanna Riego is with us, and I'm sharing an interesting article she published recently on LinkedIn, finding new ways to dance, and she's raising very important topics also. So thank you for being there, Rihanna, and thank you for being the inspiration that you've been over the years, and the link is there for people to see. We have maybe 10 more minutes before we conclude. Gareth, would you like to jump in at this time and add something else?
Sure, yeah. I would just like to say to the wellness community, I know it's difficult at the time around the hospitality sector and with gyms and clubs and so on facing, uncertain times, but I would say, club together, collaborate, learn to work together, but also take responsibility to go out and meet your communities and begin to develop those relationships, because I think there's a huge opportunity there, because it's all about building trust, as well. And that's where the wellness sector can also bridge a gap into the community, offer that space, because the citizens need that support. Think about the intellectual capital, the knowledge that is in the gym, and then export that out into the community. If the community is benefiting, the gym will benefit as well. So try and look at, because I think what we have to try and do with the SDGs, and I've learned it with this program as well and through the platform, and Roland and colleagues are leading by example, is collaboration. How do you find a way to collaborate that everyone benefits, and go into the conversation with a very open mind, be trust, have an open, basically trust people, because that's an important part of the SDGs, and particularly, in this space.
Thank you, Gareth. One thing that I would like to add to all of you listening, whether on social media or in the Zoom room, because it's a topic that has come over and over in the panels. How do we adjust? How do we adapt? How do we pivot? How do we rethink, reset, reboot our businesses when we reopen? Not if we reopen, but when it is safe to reopen, depending on where you are in the world. And a lot of operators have said that we need to add more time in the consultation room, not just for a massage or a facial or a mani or a pedi, but it is high time that estheticians, massage therapists reassess their culture in wellness about probably the 5 pillars of wellness that Wellness Weekend is advocating. How does sleep and restoration affect your immune system? How does sleep have an impact on how you flush your brain with the not the lymphatic system, but the glymphatic system, and how you can have new ideas in the morning? How does sleep impact the way you process sugar? And if you have little sleep or poor sleep, or if you're deprived of sleep with chronically, it can have an impact on your diabetes level and lead, unfortunately, to type 2 diabetes. That's only the first pillar. Then nutrition. Some of estheticians and massage therapists maybe have taken the time to take more classes about becoming a nutritionist and adding this as another chord to what they can deliver to their guests. The third one is movement, not just exercise, not just sports, movement, mindful movement, and vitality. Serenity is the fourth pillar of mindfulness. It doesn't have to be meditation. It can be meditation, but take me for an example, or not take me for an example. I'm very bad at meditation. So I'm focusing my strengths on something else that I can do, but being mindful to what you eat, what you choose, how you behave with people, this can define also how we come out of this situation. And the fifth pillar is solidarity and sense of purpose. It's a big one. So going back to what's being published right now and not looking at the statistics, as Roland is saying, but looking back to the researches, for instance, from the Global Wellness Institute, with all the initiatives and wellness evidence that Susie Ellis and Nancy Davis were talking about so eloquently yesterday afternoon. So there are things that you can definitely add to the culture, not just for your guests, but for yourselves as individuals, as people, because you sleep, you eat, you move, you should be mindful. And if you can help someone else, then please do that. So those 5 pillars are not just for the guests, but also to instill a culture of wellness within the spas, salons, the hotels, when they reopen, and instill that culture before they reopen, so that you're fully aware that then the sessions you can have is not just about the service you provide. It's a mani-pedi. Is it just what you're going to do? Actually, a few hours earlier, there was a great session from South Africa, and I believe her name was Tanya Lopez, was saying that she's adding mindfulness into the treatment room. And before the actual massage or facial starts, there's a guided relaxation. There's a guided meditation that is taking the person into a safe place. Into a place of recovery. There's so much the body can regenerate. So maybe 1 minute, last words that Roland, you would like to ask, and then Manuela, and then Gareth.
Well, I think we should make sure that once the lockdowns are ending, that we stay in contact. We need to learn from these last 3 months because these events will happen again. We will see further pandemics. But what we can see right now, that no country is prepared for this. No country was prepared for this, although everybody had been alerted. Nobody can say this came by surprise. We can see no matter in which political context we are operating, we are not good enough, our schools are not good enough, the companies are not good enough, nobody is good enough. So let's stick together after we can meet again and draw conclusions how to get better. We will invite everybody to join for the SDG Champions Conference, which we will run no matter what's going on, June 23 to 27. Those who are allowed to enter Austria, please be with us. Those who can't enter, join via video conferencing, because we need to learn from each other, and we need, and that is what I hope we will get in future, a much stronger amount of civil disobedience. We in 2020 should be a little bit more awake and willing to question what people are telling us, what we have to do and what we can't do. My daughter was celebrating her 6th birthday during Corona, and she was not allowed to see any of her friends.
Mm.
This was sick. It was totally wrong to not have at least 1, 2, 3, or 4 of her friends celebrate together with her. We know it today. We actually knew it 2 months ago when her birthday was, but we were still too obedient to break the rule. And we learn now that most of these things which were discussed and declared as the right things, that now looking back, we realize they were maybe not that right. So we should find a way where we can communicate faster with all of us. And that is, I think, the big opportunity for the wellness sector, because you are the guys creating space where the mind can fly. And that's what we need.
Thank you so very much. Very inspiring words indeed. As you were talking, some people were contributing because aromatherapy can definitely help. Karen Balou is talking about immunology, a fantastic brand that she's developed. There's also talk about Avgos and how sauna can help. But to you, Manuela, 1 minute. What would you like to share? Words of hope to cope with the situation and soar.
Oh, great. Okay, so it is true. We are all in this together. I'm sure this is resonating across each and every country. Let's make this experience of the coronavirus, which has given a lot of grief and a lot of sadness all around the world, into a positive outcome. And the positive outcome is that we have the capacity, the ability, the knowledge, and the willingness really to embrace wellness, a wellness that is really starts with our immune system, but it also expands towards planetary health and global health. I think we can do that. We have the ability, and the wellness and spa centers around the world can absolutely, they can offer the space to do that. But certainly it's moving forward from now and making it far more functional for all of us.
Thank you, Manuela. Very, very true. Gareth, I know you're a man of action. You're traveling around, well, you're not traveling around the world so much these days, but you have, and you're also a very dedicated person. What would be your 1 minute of wisdom right now, just before Mark Maloney closes, not only this session, but the 3 days of conference?
Yeah, let's look at the present and what we can do, take responsibility for our actions. I think let's look at energy as well. It plays such an important part of it. You know, let's create that community that has positive energy, a can-do attitude. As Roland says, we're definitely going to have this event on the 23rd to the 27th, the SDG Champions event. But I also want to look at the future as well and look at our society as it is. Is this the society that we want? A society that doesn't tap into the wisdom, that doesn't tap into the knowledge, that doesn't share that knowledge? I mean, knowledge should be free. It should be open source. We have this amazing technology around the world. Why are we not using it? You know, so we have many, many people who are experts in this space. And as Roland said, why were we not prepared? We need to ask these questions. How can we allow this to happen? We knew in January, February, that this was a pandemic that was going to accelerate, you know. The other thing is a virus needs, you know, people to interact, to spread. You know, look at what New Zealand's done. You've got to learn from best practice. Why are we not learning from best practice? These are the sort of things we have to bring out into the open. We have to have these conversations. We have to share this knowledge. This is absolutely crucial in order to avoid deaths, you know. And then if we look to the future, you know, our children are going to look at this point and say, what did my mother do during these times? Well, now is the time to come together, to put our collective knowledge together, to put our, you know, the financing and the resource. And I'm not an investment person, but I know from what I gather, there is a lot of money out there that can be invested in value creation. Let's get into the business of value creation, start putting these business proposals together. Also, let's start supporting each other. You know, when someone has a good idea in your local community, go and support that person. Do not be knocking that person down. How can you help them? That might simply be go and have a coffee with that individual. That's the sort of thing we need to do. So I'm optimistic for the future. I'm delighted to join the team with UNGSII and Manuela and the stuff we're doing with World Health Innovation Summit. And I'm hoping to bridge the gap into the wellness sector, that we can come forward out of this stronger.
Thank you so very much. My last word before I hand it on to Mark is, please, all of you attending, go to the bottom right of your chat box, look at the square with the 3 dots, click on it, save the conversation, save it on your laptop, and you will be saving all of the links that we have shared over the past 80 minutes. Mark, back to you.
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for a great session. I hope everybody watching, joining in over the past 3 days, we've tried to hit it from a strategic point of view, but particularly like this last session, and a very much a hands-on practical point of view, from people from inside our industry actually operating, the suppliers, the consultants, doctors, and people from outside the industry, as some of the people on this panel, and fitness experts. And I hope that we've given you practical ideas and practical methods that you can bring to bear immediately, as well as giving you thoughts for the future. I'd like to thank our supporters. I'd like to thank Biologic Research and LEMI, particularly Spark Connectors, and particularly Jean-Guy de Gabriac, who's put on so many of the sessions and backing of the World Wellness Weekend. Thank you, Jean-Guy, for your commitment. Thank you for the PB team, for your hard work too. All of you out there, my best wishes, our best wishes on behalf of Professional Beauty.